Hi everybody and welcome to American Horror Story. American Horror Story is where we tell is where I tell classic retellings of our favorite childhood stories. And in particular, my favorite childhood story was Mercer Mayer's Little Critter. So our first American Horror Story my first classic retelling of Mercer Mayer's Little Critter will be Little Critter and the Wendigo. So let's get started, shall we? So little critter was little critter was it many years ago when little critter was a student in the Gainesville ISD. When before he took over his grandparents' American Berkshire, where he and his dad took over his grandparents' American Berkshire farm. Little critter was a member of Boy Scout Troop 90 of Gainesville, Texas. Holker was basically a member of Boy Scout Troop 90 of Gainesville, Texas, which was chartered to a VFW post, which was chartered to a local VFW post in Gainesville. And on one occasion, Little Critter told me that that's Boy Scout troop and you have to understand that out of both me and Little Critter, who were both in Boy Scouts, Little Critter Little Critter actually earned the Eagles. Little Critter actually became an Eagle Scout. Little Critter actually became an Eagle Scout, and I didn't. So Little Critter, um, this was one of Little Critter's very first camping trips. This was in the fall of 2005. Little Critter had gone camping with his Boy Scout troop at Little Critter had gone camping with his Boy Scout troop at Cleburne State Park. And basically um he went to bed that first night after kind of a light supper. But that first night was different. He wakes up maybe about that Friday night, Saturday morning, and hears something moving outside his tent. He could feel, he could hear the big heavy breathing and the heavy footsteps of what appears to be a large creature about 7 feet tall. And the only way is a little critter looks outside his tent and sees a pale humanoid-like entity with blood dripping from its mouth. The only way he could describe it, or was able to describe it, as being a pale humanoid entity with blood dripping from its mouth and blood on its hands, as if it had just eaten something. And it was kind of, it was let out these really creepy moaning sounds as if it was searching for something as it was searching for its prey. And so um Wilker's just sitting there and he's paralyzed in fear about what he's seeing. And so meanwhile the thing that whatever he's seeing kind of eyes Wilker and takes off into the night and takes off into the night. The next morning at breakfast, he's asking around, and he actually has and there's actually another scout in his Boy Scout troop. There's actually one third Algonquin, and this the scout in his troop, who's actually one third Algonquin, tells Little Critter that what he saw the previous night was a Wendigo. According to Algonquin folklore, the creature, the bloody pale humanoid entity Little Critter saw the previous night was actually a Wendigo, and that basically, like, the Wendigo the Wendigo will often stalk hunters, will often stalk hikers, hunters, and campers who are often will often stalk people when they're hunting, hiking, or camping. And so, unfortunately, Little Critter didn't see the entity for the rest of the camping trip, but since then, Little Critter's had an encounter with the same bloody pale humanoid entity since that night. Only now, since then, Little Critter's had basically after Little Critter and little sister graduated high school in 20 from Gainesville High School in 2011. Little sister went on to study rehabilitative studies at UNT, and then Little Critter went on to study agricultural sciences at NCTC, so he could continue working on his grandparents' farm, what is now him and his dad's Berkshire pig farm. And basically, after little sister graduated from UNT with her degree in rehabilitative studies, she founded what is now her Urban Ranger program. And believe it or not, I actually have my own Urban Ranger program. And it's little sister basically founded her Urban Ranger program as a adaptive outdoor recreation program for adults with intellectual and as a adaptive outdoor recreation program for adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities aged 18 and above, which is what my Urban Ranger program is based around, which is adaptive outdoor recreation for adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities ages 18 and above. And basically basically there was one encounter Little Critter had in over Labor Day weekend 2016. Little Sisters Urban Ranger program went on one of their first campouts to to Caprock Canyon State Park, and they stayed in one of the lakefront sites at Caprock Canyon State Park. They stayed in one of the lakefront sites at Caprock Canyon State Park over Labor Day weekend 2016. And basically, Little Critter remembers that the first night they were there, he was camped out on a tarp, right? And he had driven some stakes into the ground and was camped out on a tarp. And basically, in the middle, they had placed all they had to put all their coolers. They had to put all the coolers. They had to place all their coolers in their in the they had to place all the coolers in the company vehicles, in the Urban Ranger, in the program's company vehicles, so it wouldn't get, so the food wouldn't get attacked by wild animals. And Lukather wakes up and he hears something trying to get into their campsite, right? Because they had multiple lakefront campsites to accommodate everybody. And Lukather wakes up and he hears this He sees the same pale, blood-soaked, pale humanoid entity that he has seen on so many occasions, and he knew it was basically the same Wendigo. He knew it was basically the same Wendigo that he had seen during his time in the Boy Scouts. So it was basically like it was, by this time Little Critter was already an Eagle Scout. By this time Little Critter's already an Eagle Scout. And, he's already helped he and his cousin Stuart, who was basically Little Critter and his dad's bookkeeper for Little Critter and his dad's Berkshire pig farm, is also helping out with Little Sister's Urban Ranger program. And so, you know, you know, luckily Little Critter actually had a pellet gun that actually had a pellet gun. And once he pointed his pellet gun at the Wendigo, it basically kind of let out let out let out let out a moan, let out a basically moaned like it was scared of seeing the like it was scared of seeing of Luger pointing his pellet gun at it, and then it just ran off. And Little Critter never saw it again for the rest of the campsite of the camping trip. And like in many Cree and Ojibwe speaking communities, the Wendigo is basically a cannibalistic monster that is said to make someone that is said to consume human flesh and even um, turn people into the alleged monster itself. And I've learned this through years of researching American myths and legends, um, particularly supernatural myths and legends, about particularly supernatural myths and legends. Um, and so, Little Critter has often told me about many supernatural encounters He's had during his time in the outdoors, especially during his time with the Boy Scouts and leading up to becoming an Eagle Scout. And so I know that Little Critter doesn't lie, and I've personally had my own supernatural encounters with the Marfa Lights of West Texas. And I can say the Marfa Lights of West Texas